We are live. Man, this is, don't call it a comeback.
Yeah, well,
Greg, dude, welcome back.
hey, thanks for having me, man.
Our first repeat guest. I'm guessing we did something right. We didn't scare you away, thank God.
Yeah, we just ran out of time after 2.5 hours last time, so obviously we need to try and go for new PR.
Still to date, our longest episode. And if I may, the episode where I had the most intellectual feedback. So, like, after we post certain episodes, I'll give you an example. When we did the Whitney McAllister one, there was a lot of women that were messaging me like, I never thought about that, about OnlyFans and all these other things. But when we posted yours, it was a lot of people messaging me like, I didn't even know about XYZ. I never even thought about this. Or they'd say something like, I was on the fence on RFK Jr., but like hearing you guys talk about it kind of like swayed me in one way or another. It was funny to see because it was the first time that we did that the podcast had an output like that where I was like, oh shit, like this is exactly what I wanted it to be.
Well,
so
good.
I wanted to say like I appreciate you and thank you for coming on, man.
Well, I appreciate you for having me back, and I really enjoyed it. I think sharing it with friends, I can be a lot as a friend to handle. I'm always throwing stuff at my friends, whether they want it or not, at 7 a.m. in the morning. But so I mean, I just can't thank you enough. It seems to allow some of my friends to digest my thoughts and at their pace, as opposed to me just word vomiting all over.
What was the feedback on your end? Was it like positive, negative?
Man, really good. Kind of same thing. It just it sparked some conversations with people, and I don't know that I particularly won anybody over because of the podcast, but to your point, I think we at least opened some people's minds. I mean, some people don't even know that Robert Kennedy Jr. is running for office still. Yeah. You know, now I blame the media for that a little bit, and you know the White House current situation and trying to subdue him because you know Biden's whole take in 2020 was, well, back to normalcy, a return to normalcy. I'm not the other guy, and so now we have another guy who you know wants to hold the feet to the fire to both these guys.
I find it hilarious how like shortly after our last podcast when we were talking about RFK Jr. and him possibly getting on a debate stage and everything like that, literally I think it was like a week or two after. Biden throws down the quote unquote proverbial gauntlet to like do a debate with Donald Trump exclusively and even goes, I'll even do two. Meanwhile, RFK Jr. is like, yo, hold up. Based on all the metrics that you say someone should be able to get on this debate, I meet all those metrics. I'm hitting all the standards, all the numbers.
274 electoral votes.
Yes, dude.
Officially.
I mean, it's astounding to me how they will stop at nothing to make it a two-person race. Now, I understand the logistics of it make it easy to have a two-person race, but if the true goal is, you know, quote-unquote democracy, we're talking about saving democracy, all right? Allow democracy, allow a democratic process to actually take place and allow for the people to hear from all qualified candidates that meet whatever threshold is necessary. Yeah, the only good thing about this is the organization that handles the debates beforehand is now basically going to dissolve because if the two parties can just come together and do their own debates, you don't necessarily need this like largely sought as impartial group when it really wasn't. So it's nice that I forget the name off the top of my head, but it's like the something of presidential debates. I hate the 3-letter acronym. I'm drawing a blank, but it'll come back to me. But long story short, it's like they're going to isolate themselves, do a debate, just them two, and then kind of like go off to the races and hope to God that it's a two-person race. And the thing that I hate about it the most, Greg, is it'll probably succeed.
You're probably right, but to the point of your little statue there, I did bring something and for you. So this is Albert Camus, The Myth of Sisyphus, and we have to continue pushing the stone up the hill, right? I've got a window. I'm excited to put down the campaign talk and stop yelling at baby boomers on Facebook. I'm sure they're ready for me as well to do that, along with many of my friends. So I apologize, but this guy has captured me in a way that I just wasn't prepared for, and leading up to Robert F. Kennedy announcing his run, you know, I was kind of one of these maybe civics nerds. Like I still. Before RFK and now, I'll turn on Profiles in Courage, the audiobook, and that's how I go to sleep at night. Like, that's what inspires me, as weird as that may sound. No. It gives me hope to know that there are people that will put their principle before a paycheck. And so I did want to bring this for you. I do have
thank
another
you.
gift for you as well at some point. But
I appreciate
to
that.
the point of, hey, does it seem like a long shot? Absolutely, but I've got to keep going. I've got to try.
I got to be honest with you though, it deters me because I'll tell you what too is once the conviction happened for Trump and the fact that he raised $58 million in a 48-hour span,
And terrifying.
insane, but not in a terrible way, like truly insane, like holy shit. It only solidified that I think he's going to actually just run with it, and I think what's going to happen is more than anything, what happens every time there's a presidential election, with the exception of Ross Perot, people will look at the two candidates and they'll, instead of voting for the person that they really want, they will vote against the person that they are afraid of. And I think that's what's going to siphon away from our future. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm
historically
wrong.
how it works. And with a two-party system, that's exactly what they want, is to say, well, you just don't want the other guy. And to the point of earlier that Biden in 2020 around a return to normalcy. Well, I think almost everyone you speak to today does not feel like this is normal. We have Russian warships on the way to Cuba. I mean, the last time I remember, like, even reading about this was obviously 1968, but you catch shows like Mad Men where the world stopped to watch these, the two forces converge. And right now, no one seems to really care, which just baffles me.
We were lucky that there was a Kennedy in office that day.
Man, it just makes me scream as much as I can into the void of social media that we need a Kennedy now. Someone who has family history and experience through this.
What do you think about this open, brazen kind of rhetoric that Putin is doing for the first time in Russia's history since the Soviet Union collapsed, actively saying that America is now an enemy of the state?
I mean, I'm no Putin apologist. I try to look at everything from a violently empathetic position to put myself in their shoes, and how would we react? I mean, in '62, we didn't appreciate when they tried to put nukes on Cuba, which we found out later they actually already had 40 nukes on the island ready to go at that time. So it had
the
nothing.
CIA just found out.
Yeah, they let us find out later, which I've come to conclude also the CIA should really stand for coup in action, because since 1947, they have overthrown, to 1997, 83 countries. That doesn't include Libya, doesn't include Iraq, doesn't include Ukraine, which we're kind of in now. And so where Russia
at least with the Ukraine, we didn't murder the political candidate. We simply just pushed a certain.
We sent $5 billion to the extreme right wing, people in Donbass and Lugansk, and through the USAID, which is all documented, and we started causing derision in Russia. I mean, these people over in that area were being killed. They were born Russian is how they see themselves in a lot of ways.
Isn't it crazy when you look back at Donald Trump's presidency, the rhetoric that was given? I remember before he was elected, the overwhelming narrative was, could you let someone with the temperament of Donald Trump in the Oval Office? Imagine we would have World War III the next day. We were at odds with Kim Jong-un and North Korea. We were having our tensions magnified with China. There was a great deal of strife in the world as Obama was exiting office. And then over the next 4 years of a Donald Trump presidency, no matter what anybody said, we saw 4 years of relative peace.
Just don't look at Yemen.
I was about to say, if you ask Yemen,
which may have led to Brexit ultimately, with 4 million people being.
The argument could also be made we were bombing the shit out of Yemen, but we also got the Abraham Accords. Jared Kushner does not get enough credit for being a Secretary of State who had no prior experience or knowledge in the matter, and then came the closest to peace in the Middle East as America has gotten since Clinton. Yeah. Terribly sorry to interrupt the content that you're enjoying right now, but if you've been watching our content for the past couple of months, you realize that Easy Talk is a brand new podcast. We're genuinely trying to figure this thing out as we're going. Some growing pains for sure. If you are genuinely enjoying this content, we feel very humble in that, but we would like to ask that you would also subscribe and like to the channel, simply because it does help us in the algorithms and ultimately to grow. So take a second. I'd really appreciate it. And on with the show.
I agree. The book I finished was,
Braveheart sucked.
Yeah, totally. It's on the Middle East. It'll come back to me as well. But The Truth About Camp David. I think I spoke about it last time, but really fascinating book. We did get close to a two-state solution there a couple times. Obviously, powers that be inside of there.
Can you go in a little bit on that? Because what you're saying is when Clinton met at Camp David with
Yasser Arafat and
which was the Israel Israel Prime Minister and I believe the leader of
PLO at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, would be Yasser Arafat. And we tried to strong arm both sides into an agreement, and we did come close. The problem is someone would offer something, and then they would take it back. Offer something, and then take it back. And so there just wasn't a lot of trust there. And then we, in the 11th hour, kind of pivoted to try to go a different route, and it just kind of torpedoed the whole deal. So you had Dennis Ross, who was in there, who sounds like he might have been an issue from the Palestinian side, wasn't trusted. Madeleine Albright also may have thrown a wrench or two in there. So they did get close to giving them credit, trying to, again, a war that goes on forever.
Can I ask you a question that I think about often? Sometimes whenever you're trying to mask your true intentions, you want to give the illusion of effort.
Sure.
And, there was never a two-state solution that ended up actually being created because of these meetings.
Right.
Similarly speaking, when Putin first became prime minister of Russia, and he came down to meet with then Bush Jr. This is how it is said. He specifically asked Bush Jr. to his face, "We would like to join NATO. Yeah. Can Russia join NATO?" And then it was told to Bush by whoever the powers that be are that can't happen. But it was described, and by the way, my source for this was Tucker Carlson.
That's fair. His
podcast, his literature. So take that with a grain of salt. I always do from all of my sources. However, it is not out of the realm of possibility if you, given today's current political climate and given the escalatory nature since the early 2000s. It is astounding to me that after the fall of the Soviet Union, America's ability to be the biggest sore winners is astounding to me.
That's a good way to put it.
Because we at that moment could have really blanketed the world with our ideals, with our convictions, really came similar to how we came after World War II and kind of rebuilt Europe.
Marshall Plan.
Yes, we could have done something very similar with Russia, the Soviet Union, the Balkans, the Balkan areas, really brought them into the fold of like Western idealism. Instead, we chose for them to be an enemy. And I mean, is it
being the key word?
Yeah, is it any surprise that we're at where we're at today with them?
No, I mean, and what people fail to forget too is that Russia, they took on the greatest losses in World War II. I mean, they lost 20-30 million people. If you it's like they've taken the equivalent of the entire East Coast into Chicago that was completely destroyed, farmland, cities, everything. So
they made up the bulk of the infantry.
They made up the bulk of the infantry.
Allies.
So Russia was our partner, and I'm not going to say that Russia's always been good guys, but I don't think we can look at ourselves after overthrowing 80 plus democratically elected leaders in the last 60 years.
I said it off the air.
Do we have the high horse?
I said it off the air, but I'll say it again now. Yeah. It's like the more you learn about American history, it's like, well, I like our murderers better than their murderers.
Yeah, I mean, again, even people that love Obama, I think we might have touched on last time, he dropped 26,117 bombs the year he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 7 countries.
But let me
again, there's a context there. But,
yes, that's what I'm trying to say. Is like, okay, so it seems like no matter who's in office, red or blue,
yeah,
war, conflict, fighting just seems to always happen.
Sure.
Could this be the military-industrial complex?
Could
this be the business of war? Could this also be that like once you get elected, you get given that the Joint Chiefs of Staff come down and they say, okay, here's the binder with all of our secrets, and this is why we're doing all these things. Like a lot of times, I think to myself, when you have such executive authority, especially for the world's largest military presence that has ever existed on the face of the earth, there has to be things that we don't know, right? Sure. So we don't know the whole picture. But my thing is always like, when the defense budget increases year over year over year, it seems like the industry of war stands to benefit from constant conflict. And then it begs the question, how much of this is truly for our national security and how much of this is for our national GDP?
Well, again, I think when you say national GDP or security, if you really just swap out the term into corporate interest, then I think you have your answer.
I don't know. How do you look at someone who's trying to go into military service today and tell them that like they're truly fighting for their country? Because They are.
Yeah.
They are. And I don't want to diminish military service,
not.
but like, let me put it to you this way. If I was 18 years old and like a World War II, like a Pearl Harbor happened, let's go.
Yeah.
But if I'm 18 years old and I'm thinking about enlisting and they're telling me to go to Ukraine, no. Why am I going there? Why am I fighting that fight?
I mean, and to not get too far away from the original question of, with Russia is, our history is, again, we helped create this chaos. And then there's a month before the downfall of the democratically elected people in Ukraine, there's now recordings of Victoria Nuland, picking her future cabinet, which included Zelensky, who, he ran on the Minsk Accords, if I totally butcher that, which initially were going to give Donbass and Lugansk, or keep those with Ukraine, but it would be under the stipulation that those people could still, speak Russian, be Russian. But as soon as he got elected in,
there's also nuance to that too,
language.
because it would also be like a dual citizenship. Like they could they could cross the border as they see wish.
Right.
It would be like kind of like a dual citizenship scenario because they were so close to the border with Russia and they shared so much culture and they wanted to speak the Russian language. They basically didn't want to ostracize these people. That was the idea.
Putin rejected taking on Donbass, the Donbass.
Well,
He's like, I don't want you guys. I'm like, no, I want a buffer, and that's what Ukraine was up until 2014.
Can you go into that buffer? What do you mean by buffer?
So basically, you go talk about. I want to say it was James Baker in the 90s, and in the fall of the Soviet Union, said, we will not move NATO 1 inch to the east, and all we've done is move it 1,000 miles, and I think into 14 or 15 countries at this point. And again, when they do that, it is billions of dollars that they have to update their weaponry to NATO standards, which are all Lockheed, Raytheon, whoever, Boeing, you go down the list, right? But with that, Ukraine didn't want to be close to the West, and they didn't want to be close to Russia. So in terms of a buffer, they were non-committal, which we did not like. And so we started causing, to the tune of $5 billion, chaos and derision inside of their own country, and eventually were able to help, throw another democratically elected leader out of office and place in someone that does what we want them to.
Did you hear what Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer said about like 6 or 7 months ago when they were discussing the additional like $90 billion that we sent over there? Yeah. Chuck Schumer had the balls on national television to say, well, the majority of the ammunition and the artillery that we've used in Ukraine were older munitions.
Which, if you even
so they were doing us a favor. It's like the verbiage he used, like they're doing us a favor by using our older munitions. And I'm sitting here watching this going, oh my God, you're just saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah. Well, and to be the other thing to look at too is the way that war has changed today. I mean, they're sending $300 drones with bombs on them into these huge tanks and getting rid of these things. I mean, I don't know. The warfare has absolutely changed. I mean, the other scary thing is we're not the nuclear superpower of the world. It's Russia. They have almost 1,000 more nukes than we do. They can shoot our nukes down. We can't shoot theirs down.
My argument to that, though, is they might have hypersonic missiles and all that. But whenever we're talking about nuclear warfare, whenever that is even brought up, I always think it's like such a moot point because you could diminish the warheads by like I think it's like 100th of what we currently have, and it's still enough to send us into the Stone Age.
Oh, I mean,
it's like when we're talking about
get rid of them.
Yeah, when we're talking about nuclear, good luck with that one.
Yeah,
when we're talking about nuclear artillery, it's like it doesn't necessarily matter how much we have because how much we have is so astronomically like the amount of death, carnage, and destruction that can be caused with what we have. Half of what we have, a fourth of what we have, is so astronomical that it doesn't really matter how much we have. And I love that you're saying that the nature of war is changing because it is, and I don't think anyone's doing it better than China. They're really placing an economic war where they're buying up land, resources.
Well, they're doing what we used to do, and you go back to Central America. All those Central American countries used to be in debt to us. And with their, Belt Road Initiative,
colonialization.
Yeah, I mean, they're, for the last 20 years, we've spent $8 trillion blowing up bridges and churches and schools and ports and whatever. Nord Stream 2 pipeline, allegedly, right? China has been doing the opposite. They've been building, and granted, they've got. I mean, with this war with Russia, we pushed Russia and China closer together, which is not good for us, I don't believe. No,
definitely isn't. But it also kind of creates a symbiotic relationship with each other that if Russia were to decide tomorrow that China's, this is just a hypothetical, but if Russia were to decide tomorrow that if we could make some sort of agreement with Russia, the U.S., so let's say tomorrow Donald Trump is elected, hands an olive branch to Putin, we're best friends again. I mean, the economic powerhouse that is China could be halted tomorrow because they need so much Russian oil, right? I would say that the way geopolitics works today is, I said it on the previous podcast, I'll say it again. Globalization of the markets is the only thing that has prevented World War III and nuclear war. It really is. So like when we talk about capitalism, when we talk about the free and open markets, like we really need to do it justice and say the only reason that like, China hasn't invaded Taiwan, that Russia hasn't just blown over Ukraine is because there's a world economy that hangs on the balance of free and open trade between superpowers and, not necessarily superpower countries alike. And when you disturb the natural peace and natural order of the world, everyone will blame you. Sure. So we're trying to do, for the last 5 years, just proxy wars, which is pretty insane because it's
50.
Yeah, because it's like proxy wars with the 3 major superpowers of the world. And who has stood to benefit? Nobody.
I don't see the benefit so far. 500,000 dead people in Ukraine and Russia probably feel
What do you think the goal is here? Like if you're America, because I think about this often. I go, I don't know what we're doing. I really don't.
I truly feel we don't either. I mean, I said here think with Biden in office, I just think talk about the perfect figurehead puppet to have in place. Whether you like Joe Biden or not, I don't dislike the man. I can find reasons to dislike him, I think, if I really look. But overall, I'm just like, this is not someone that should be in charge right now. We have too much chaos happening. And to counter that point to my Donald Trump friends, look, Donald Trump is either A, the greatest leader we've ever had, or B, he got tricked at every turn by the people he put in his cabinet. It cannot be both.
No, I agree.
So that's where I am trying to make this case, and why it means so much to me, Aaron, that you have me back on here to talk to you and to your viewers and people that I know about this, to say, look, these two options need to have their feet held to the fire on all that they've done wrong. I mean, whether you like it or not, Trump oversaw the biggest compromise of our liberties in the country, in the history of the United States.
That's why I'm not voting for him. Whenever someone tells me, they're like, but Arion, like, what about Biden? What if Biden wins? I say to them, I go, it was under Trump that Operation Warp Speed was kicked in place. Yeah. It was under Trump that he closed down the economy. It was under Trump that all these mandates and things happened. If you remember at the time, the Democrats were down in Chinatown talking about like, he's xenophobic, he's all these other things. It was Donald Trump's initial push to close down cities, streets, all these other things. And I'll never forgive him for that. Similarly, I hold Trump accountable for his reaction to COVID because when he got elected, the whole slogan was drain the swamp, drain the swamp. And then for the next 4 years, he proceeded to hire the swamp, listen to the swamp.
John Bolton.
Yeah, I mean, dude, his cabinet was the swamp with the exception of places where he put his family. You know what's funny? The irony in that is like Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump were like scrutinized heavily. Huckabee Sanders, she was scrutinized heavily for being the PR rep for a short amount of time. But like when you look back at like that administration, they did some of the best work. I still say that Jared Kushner was the best Secretary of State of my lifetime, and he had no prior experience in the role. But when I look back at the Donald Trump presidency, it's like the only thing that really happened was the moderate tax level decreased, which I am for. Certain Supreme Court justices with more conservative leanings were put into place. And then you closed down the world economy. Yeah. Those were your 3 things. And like when people tell me like, well, we got to vote for Donald Trump, do I think Donald Trump is better than a Joe Biden? Yes.
Totally agree.
Yes, I do.
I can do ranked choice voting. It's easy. It's first, second, third in my
mind.
Like,
yes.
Or first, second, not at all.
So like, but is he the best candidate that is on the ballot? No. Do I agree with everything RFK? I said this last time. Do I agree with everything RFK Jr. says? No, I don't like his Israel policy. I don't think his housing policy is actually like really attacking. I don't think interest rates on mortgages are the problem. I think it's the supply of housing that is the problem. That
is actually funny you say that. I've been reading this book by Thomas Howell, and I'm like 70 pages in, but Economic Facts and Fallacies. And they're talking about the 1970s and how over-restriction of building codes has just caused where people can't live.
There's can't no building happening.
And actually, there was a case, I think, in somewhere in Minnesota in this past couple of years where they deregulated some of their housing and permit restrictions, and all of a sudden, rent prices are dropping.
Dude,
Isn't that amazing?
This is economics 101. It is supply and demand. You can complain about like, the demand of housing all you want, but you have to do something about the supply, or else, yes, prices. I said it last time, I'll say it again. People are not bitching about 7 or 6% interest rates. What they're complaining about is 7 or 6% interest rates on a $400,000 home that 3 years ago was going for 250. It's the inflation of the price. The interest rate is like secondary.
And when it comes to RFK, again, he's not perfect, but to me, I'm looking at the United States as, a big house. And can we at least clean up one of the bedrooms or a basement? Can we stop the Ukraine war? Can we get the poison out of our food? We have 60% of children that have a chronic disease. Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable what we're consuming. Going to the grocery store is impossible. Even you go to Whole Foods and you sit here and you flip it over, and it's all these other preservatives and chemicals that are being put on to the stuff that we consume on a daily basis. And that's one of the most important things that I think RFK talks about is getting the poison out of food. He has been suing these companies his entire career, and he knows the people to go after. I mean, there are these certain fulcrum points, whether it's the FDA, and you talk about the budget that we spent on Ukraine. The FDA, I think its budget's like $12 billion. CDC is another $15 billion. I mean, we've sent $100+ billion to Ukraine. I mean, we've been cutting food stamps unnecessarily. We've been cutting Medicaid to people that need it. I mean, we are not taking care of our house. And that, I guess, is where I come back on RFK. And again, is he not perfect on Israel? It doesn't seem to me, to your point, that anyone's going to be able to solve that. So I just want, if I can't solve this, can we at least clean up some stuff over here, and then let's come back and work on these other things?
I think what you're trying to say is like make your bed before you go outside kind of thing.
Yeah. The problem is we've just been outside, dropping bombs for the last however many years.
Yeah,
I'm just tired of it.
It's kind of insane to me how we seem to have this unlimited budget for causing war, but we can't, whenever someone tells me, because I'm more conservative, financially, liberal, socially, right? Sure. So like I believe that you have bodily autonomy, but I also don't believe that the government should be subsidizing any sort of surgeries or anything like that you want to do. Those are all elective as far as I'm concerned.
Fair.
Vice versa, I think when we start having a discussion about how it is that we spend our tax dollars, I'm willing to have a discussion about possibly increasing the amount of taxed dollars I will give. But until we do a clean look at our accounting, until the Pentagon can pass an audit, I don't want to fucking hear from anybody any sort of tax increases. Yeah. Because it used to be, when I was younger, it used to be like patriotic to pay taxes.
Yeah.
It was like, by paying taxes, I'm giving to the school, I'm giving to the police and the fire department, I'm giving to the military, I'm giving to Social Security and all these other things. Now, it almost feels like you're an idiot if you pay your taxes. Because they're first of all, the argument can be made, the deficit spending that we have, the need for taxation at all, what is money at this point? But more so than that, you're giving money to people who are fiscally irresponsible. Sure. And I would never give $100 to someone that I thought was fiscally irresponsible, let alone 28% of my annual income. Yeah. One of the things I do love about RFK Jr. is his understanding in the nuance of these three-letter agencies. But in my opinion, Vivek had it best when he said we have to demolish them. There are three-letter agencies that I don't think should exist. Truthfully, the Department of Education is one of them, because they have. If we are grading these organizations, unelected bureaucrats, for the merit of the output of their job, who has done a worse job than Anthony Fauci and the Department of Education? Who has done a worse job? We've never been sicker, and we've never been dumber.
Well, I don't know. We can blame the entire Department of Education on that, because we do have good teachers out there.
The Department of Education and public school teachers are two completely different things.
Totally agree. But you want to pick on somebody. I mean, Anthony Fauci, watching him testify, gosh, nothing gave me joy.
Dude,
I was so happy to see that man.
What made you happier? The Dave Smith versus Andrew Cuomo debate, or Anthony Fauci on the stand?
Oh, well, Dave Smith, absolutely.
Really?
He had more free reign. I mean, they're in Congress. It's, they have 3 minutes to try to get at him, and he's so evasive and so slippery in the way he speaks. I think the Daily Show put out something here like Donald Trump, what he says out of court and what he says in court. And I was like, now do Anthony Fauci in court and out of court. Because that man lied to so many people. And that, I cannot recommend that podcast enough, the Dave Smith, Chris Cuomo debate. To me, the Fauci hearings, whatever, he's going to say, oh, well, but this and that, and I didn't know. And, people say, and that's what Trump defenders will say too, well, what else were we supposed to do? Not shut down the economy is what we were supposed to do. You were supposed to let people keep working. We protect the sick. That initial time in COVID, two weeks to stop the spread or the wave, 2 months, most people were even on board with that. At that point, let's protect the old people, but giving brand new babies these vaccines, which I think The study, if I recall, from the Wuhan cover-up book, said that it could cause giving a 6-month-old kid could give a 3,000% increase of some neural disease in the future. So I'm just like, okay, well, why would we even consider that then if that's the case? And there's just so much data that's been suppressed, and now people just want to check out. I mean, it is truly Plato's allegory of the cave. That's how I feel. I feel like I have been expelled. Like that book was the sun that like just shined a bunch of light on a world that I did not know existed.
Will you ever trust the government again?
Does RFK win the election? Then maybe.
I mean, but think about it logically, like because
and that's only a degree. I'm not
well,
saying.
Here's the
yes,
thing. Let me extrapolate on my question. Let's say RFK Jr. wins. Let's just say, and we have 8 years of RFK Jr. At some point, he will have to step down as well. Or let's say Donald Trump wins the next election, or Joe Biden does. My question is more like expanded. Like I can tell you, Greg, if Trump is in office, if Biden is in office, or if RFK Jr. is in office, I am so skeptical of anything that comes out of the White House.
Fair.
Out of the Pentagon, out of any of our government agencies. And I shouldn't be like that. But I feel like the burden of proof is now on them to admit they're telling the truth or show me that they are, and not on me to show that they're lying.
And that's one of the big things why people like Trump. You go back to, was it 2016 when he's running or debating against Hillary? And she goes, oh, well, he doesn't pay his taxes. He goes, you're damn right I don't. He goes, that's because she and her friends haven't changed the tax code in 20 years, and I use it. Yeah. I mean, so he, like that was Dave Chappelle's whole skit on SNL, is he is a truthful liar, right? Is he will give you a little bit of the truth, but he's just not someone that, when I look at Donald Trump, if we vote him back in, I think of two things. One, in 4 years, then what? Yeah. Is it Vivek, which I think Vivek is on a very good track. I totally want to, I want him in the world. I want him in the bubble. I want him involved.
I like him, but
he's not there yet.
No, what I mean by I like him, but is I don't know if it's the process of the actual general election or the primary election or whatever. And I understand that you have to change with, new information and be malleable as a leader. I'm not saying that I'm faulting Vivek for flip-flopping on a lot of issues. But Vivek is a really good politician. And what attracts me to a Donald Trump figure or an RFK Jr. type figure is it actually doesn't really have to do a whole lot with their policies or their cabinet or anything like that. I think that people should have power that don't necessarily want to be in that position. Like when Donald Trump first went down those escalators to make his speech, he didn't want to be president. He felt like he had to be president to save the country. That's the narrative. Whether you believe that or not, I'm not worried about that. What I'm trying to say is that was the narrative that was proposed. In a lot of ways, when RFK Jr. had his announcement speech, it was the same type of vibe. The same type of energy was like, I don't want to do this. I never wanted to do this, but I feel pulled to do this. Yeah. And I think that the only people that should have power are those that don't want power, because then they won't abuse it. And I don't know if Vivek is on that trajectory. I think he is hungry. Yeah. Let me put it this way. I would have voted for DeSantis over Vivek.
That's fair. To me, my thing is I can't vote. I didn't vote for Donald Trump in 2016. I didn't vote for him in 2020. I'm not doing it in 2024. Now, to people out there, I didn't vote. I voted for Gary Johnson. Was the last president I actually voted for. I mean, I couldn't vote for Hillary. I couldn't vote for Biden. And Trump just does not. Voting in Trump is voting in someone that half our country hates automatically. I mean, half my friends just lose their minds. I mean, I have friends texting me the day that he got his felony charges, and they were like, best day of my life. I'm like, this is the best day of your life? That means you are part of the problem.
That's a sad fucking life.
That is a sad thing to say. And whether it's a joke or not, I mean, to revel in this guy, it's like...
Well, I'm all for memeing. I'm all for all these things. But the problem is, they're not joking. I had a friend who was like, 32 counts, Ariane. 32 counts. 34. Sorry, 34 counts.
Of the same thing.
And I told him that. I was like, that's 34 counts of the same thing. It's just that you have to take each one into account. And then I had to explain to him, I was like, you also realize that campaign finance charges are not a state crime. So like New York State did that against Donald Trump, and the precedent, because that's how law works.
If they could get him for treason, they would have got him for treason by now. But they can't.
They can't.
That's the deal.
But it's worse than that, though, because they're kind of like, the way law works is a lot of it is based on previous case law. So like
Right.
if you're trying to make a defense or a prosecution, your arguments a lot of time will reference previous cases that are very similar. Hey,
How deep did they have to dig for this one?
not just how deep did they have to dig for it, but what precedent have they now set?
Right.
What
Going
precedent have they now set?
What do you think Trump is going to do when he gets in office now?
Not just that, but now this
They've opened the door for all their fears to come true.
They're-
They've created their own monster.
yes,
When he gets in.
yes, because now you're basically saying that like
Game on.
if anybody else tries to do something that Donald Trump will do, you've shown your hand. You've shown what you will do. You will destroy their life. So now if anyone else does this, or if Donald Trump gets back in, imagine what he'll do to you because he understands now the cost.
And to me, the parallel is this is like if a cop says, "Hey, you can park here," and then you get out of the car and walk away, and you get written a ticket. I mean, he went to his attorney for advice, and now, granted, if he told his attorney to do illegal things, sure, a little bit more nefarious and more blame there. But if his attorney said this is the legal expense and that's how we documented, to me, I don't know. Talking to some of my attorney friends, and they're not Trumpers, they're like, this is basically like a misdemeanor, like chalked up to felony charges.
Yes.
And it doesn't feel right. And
But
here's what I would make the
but
argument.
the context though, felony charges on a previous president and current Republican nominee. That's insane.
And I mean, to me, they think they think they've got him to some degree, and that you're
don't
like,
got
oh,
shit.
felon in the office. To me, I'm like that. This is ridiculous. His supporters do not care. The last thing that they care about, they can't afford.
I'm not a
food,
supporter, and I don't care.
Yeah, they can't afford food. They can't afford. I mean, food is crazy. Everything's just so expensive. Home prices are skyrocketed. No one feels really stable when I talk to them about how the future is going to be. And to me, if by putting him back in, look, he had his chance. He didn't do what he said he was going to do. He didn't really sell the JFK files. I'm still mad about that as a JFK guy myself. And to me, he doesn't move the door forward. To me, all this is a revolving door.
Why do you think that is? That was a weird one for me when he didn't declassify those.
I mean, if we did it to JFK, guess what we can do to you? I mean, is that the threat? I don't know if it's that dark.
I don't know if they can do that with Trump.
But to me, is that what they're doing now? Have we moved on from physical assassination to we're going to try to assassinate you character-wise, financially, and just chop you off every bit we can?
That's the logical theory right now is like they have tried everything except a bullet.
But what's funny is my Democrat friends be like, how can you vote for this guy? How can you vote for this guy? Go back to the 90s when Clinton got in trouble.
Yeah.
Guess what? Democrat voters didn't care either. They said, nope, this is our guy. We know it's part of his character of who he is. Like, we know he's kind of a little scoundrel, right? That's Bill Clinton's appeals to some degree. And Donald Trump, like, you're like, oh, this is a black mark on his personality. It's like, this is his personality. If there was one person in the United States that you're like, he's going to pay off a porn star, it would probably be Donald Trump, you know? It's like people don't care about hush money. What they want is to be able to afford a home. They want to be able to take their kids to a good school. To your point, the Department of Education, we want to stop this war in Ukraine. Can we just fix some problem? And to me, it comes back to Bobby Kennedy can fix some of the problems. And he knows how. I mean, Putin has said from day one he wants to negotiate. You know, that's where they even came with Minsk Accords too. Was in April 22, France, Germany, Zelensky initialed and Putin initialed that they were going to start withdrawing troops from Kiev, and they did that on good faith until we sent Boris Johnson over there to blow it up. And then you go back even further, where people are like, oh well, he's going to invade all of Europe. Poland's next, and then you'll be sorry, guys. When Putin moved into Crimea. That happened because he has said for years, and even Russian leaders before Putin said, Ukraine's the red line, Ukraine's the red line, do not come there, that is it. And what did we do? We came to the red line and we danced all over it. And when he moved into Crimea, it was not an invasionary force. There's 3.5 million people in Kiev at the time. He moved 40,000 troops without firing a bullet into the Donbass, Lugansk, and Crimea region, which is their only warm water port of Vladivostok. I'm totally probably butchering that. But it's their only warm water port they've had for 347 years. So people are like, oh, Russian is expansionist. No, they are not. They have more land than anybody. That is silly. They wanted to hold on to their one warm water port. We came in and caused chaos, and all they saw was that NATO and the United States was going to control their only warm water port. And so that's why Putin has the backing of the Kremlin. That's why Putin has the backing of the Russian people in this. Because we, again, have just moved in on their territory to the Pax Americana. Go back to the JFK peace speech, right? Go listen to that. I listened to it today on the drive here because it winds me up. And I'm like, gosh, man, if people could just listen to this as their alarm clock every day, this world might be a little calmer.
I think the perspective shift is kind of crazy. And I always say, like, whenever you're looking at a certain sort of conflict, you have to always put yourself in the position of the enemy or the opposing force.
And there's a real lack of that.
Dude, there's none.
There's
it's like,
no
I often,
empathy for anyone.
I was like, if
we constitute as evil.
If Russia was using Mexico or Canada as a proxy in which to influence that country to do war or to push away from us, we would not stand for it. Not just that, but
Russia losing to Ukraine is like us losing a war to Mexico. They cannot allow it.
They can't.
They cannot allow it. They have
By the way,
if you don't think that they are going to stand their ground, just go look at what they did to Stalingrad. I mean, the Russians will fight every tooth and nail to where 1 out of 7 men are remaining.
I would even make the argument that said like this whole war is like a fictitious one, because if Russia truly wanted it to be over tomorrow, they could. It goes back to
if
Putin,
we want it to be over tomorrow.
Putin, you know? I mean, they could just blow it out of the water. They don't even have to do it with nukes.
Yeah, no.
They have the ballistic capabilities. Putin has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't want to own or occupy Ukraine because he wants it as a physical buffer. And I'm just like, it blows my mind whenever I hear people talking about this conflict and they just completely miss any sort of like logical nuance of like, well, if we don't defend democracy abroad, how can we defend it here? I'm like, shut the fuck
up. You mean how we defended the 80 other countries we've overthrown, and especially Zelensky, who now that he's in, they've outlawed elections this year.
We have killed more democracy than any of our enemies.
I mean, this year, right? Ukraine is supposed to be having elections, and there's not going to be any democracy. Like, come on, that's why we went there. And when you say these things to my friends on the Democratic side, I'm met with this anger almost, going back to Plato's cave analogy. Is, you know, the guy leaves the cave and he becomes enlightened and he has to come back and he tries to tell his friends, and they are not. It's not just met with like confusion, but hostility.
Yeah.
Because you're challenging their paradigm and their worldview.
Well, it's hostility because they have a paradigm and they've never had it tested, and now they don't understand why they think what they think. I said it with Erin when she was on. It was like, we live in an age now where people just regurgitate shit they hear.
Yeah, the headlines.
They just they don't really know why it is that they're saying or thinking the things that they say or think. They respect certain either media outlets or individuals that say things, or academia, so they believe that credentials mean you're telling the truth or you're honest, and you would never, omit certain facts or details. And it's crazy to me how, like, for me, when I told you that thing about how Putin went to Bush Jr., what did I say? I also said what my source was, because I understood that the source could be biased, meaning if someone wanted to argue the point with me, there could be some arguments to be made on that. I understand that. I'm not in love. I'm not married to the way I think today. And presented with a good argument, data, or any sort of opposing viewpoints that make more sense, I will adopt them. I'm not static. I'm not set in stone. But until I get that...
And I think that's why we're friends, is because we can have a conversation and we're not so convicted in our beliefs. Was it Carl Jung or one of those super smart guys that said, I would never die for my beliefs because I might be wrong.
Yes.
I would leave at least a little bit of window of maybe we can roll this.
So why do you think people are so convicted in shit that they don't understand? Like, where does this come from?
Propaganda? I don't know. They just see it every day.
Well, propaganda's always been around.
Yeah, that's true. But maybe
it seems more intense.
Today it's hyper personalized and everybody has their own. Do you think
it's because they attached who you are morally to it? If you vote for Trump, you're a degenerate, and if you vote for Biden, you're an idiot, and if you vote for RFK Jr., you're a conspiracy hack.
And that's strange. Like, you literally just summed up how I feel like people
we're
talk
all
to me
wrong.
all the time. Yeah, we're all wrong. And it, to me, is we can all also be right to some degree if we can come together and talk and find common ground. I mean, I have friends that say, "Look, we're just not going to agree, so I don't want to talk about it." I'm like, well, if we don't want to, how are we ever going to agree if we can't at least have a conversation?
It's not, but it's not about agreeing. It's about having the discussion. It's about having an open dialogue. It's about testing our theories, our ideas. How can we progress, not as a society, but as a species, if we are relegating ourselves to our own echo chambers where we're not testing one another? I mean, that sounds so crazy to me.
I think that is also part of the problem, is everyone finds their
not just politically. Not just politically.
Yeah, for sure.
All aspects of life.
Yeah, I mean, just think of your sports radio, right? Everybody has your sports radio that talks about your team because you like how they talk about your team. They probably think very similarly to you, and so that feels nice to validate your thoughts, right?
And there's a word for it. What is it? Confirmation bias? No. There's like a word for it, basically like, oh yeah, you're saying the thing that I already think, therefore I'm smart.
And to me, I'm just as guilty. Like, a lot of the talking points you hear here are regurgitated from RFK and other people, but I take stuff from Tucker Carlson.
You're being very humble, because I know you read, I know you do your due diligence.
Well, I try, but I'm a very slow reader, so it took me the whole month to get through that Middle East book. But It's like I just try to be all over the place. The Daily is I think a really important one to see what is the New York Times saying. I like to go down Lex Friedman. I mean, Theo Von. There's just no.
Have you ever watched Breaking Points with?
I love Breaking Points. Crystal and Sagar, they're fantastic.
I don't agree with a lot of their views on certain things.
Totally.
But one of the things I absolutely love about them is like they're just like, hey, this is the news. This is the shit that's important.
Yeah, and I would say line with Sagar, but what drives me crazy he has all these Lyndon Johnson books on his thing. And, oh man, it's a JFK. I'm like, Sagar, I need you to read.
Can't be right about everything.
I need you to read a couple of these JFK books because it just I live in Colorado. Anytime I drive through the Johnson Tunnel out there in the pass, it makes me mad. I just want that guy's name erased from history.
I'm
him.
sure he'll vote for RFK Jr. based on some of the things I've heard him say, and because I know he's not going to vote for a Biden, but I don't think he's in love with a Trump either.
Which again, that gives me hope. The purpose of me being here, Ariane, and what means so much to me is the chance to sway the not diehards. The diehard Trump, the diehard Biden, they're stuck, and I want to talk to everyone else. That's kind of like, man, this I don't want this. I don't want this battle again. Yeah, so give me another option and help convince me.
But that's the minority. My problem is the opposite. I hope I'm wrong on this one.
I do too.
When I look at the people, like the independents, the people that aren't solidified yet, are few and far between, brother. It's the people that are in their trenches, World War I style, and they're waiting for the other group to try to run over and take over. It's kind of insane.
It does feel that way. Even as an RFK, I feel like I'm in no man's land. I'm trying to pull people out of the trench. Is how I feel.
This will eventually end. I mean, this will be the last election where it's like a Biden versus so Trump is done right
thank God.
after this one.
Yeah,
but here's the thing.
And so what's the next?
But
plan?
what's after?
Yeah,
what's
that
after?
is what I ask my GOP friends. Then what? And a lot of them will say, "Oh, well, Vivek," which maybe,
I don't think it's gonna be Vivek.
I mean, maybe I'm not against that guy. I need him to continue to grow and learn and continue to be a good politician if that's what he wants to be.
Who do the Democrats have?
I mean, I'm genuinely nervous that the Democrats are going to put up. They're going to get rid of Biden-Harris this summer, and they're going to bring in Hillary, and they're going to bring in Newsom.
If they bring in Hillary, slam dunk Trump. Slam dunk.
You think so?
Yeah,
I don't know.
100%.
Do you remember I'm with her?
Do you remember?
I know a lot of people didn't like
10% inflation, and let me ask you this. If let's say that happens,
I'm just saying, think your Democratic friends.
but
how excited they would be for Hillary.
I don't think they would be.
You don't think so?
No, because she already lost to him. And let's be honest, we've had 4 years of.
She even had some election denial after she lost.
Oh yeah,
so
there's been election denial ever since even with Bush Sr. and Clinton.
Yeah.
So,
actually, RFK Jr. wrote a award-winning article on Rolling Stone about how there was malarkey in the Bush-Gore 2000 election.
There's a gentleman that I'm working on. So one of the things that we're trying to do with this podcast is actually like fly in certain people and
that'd be fun.
Yeah, there's a guy by the name of Jim Crump, and he is like the leading investigator / he's working right now on Capitol Hill through his organization and entity. I got to be careful how much I say, how much I don't, because I'm also trying to fly him out here to have a conversation with me. That might be like the first 6-hour podcast that we put in 2 episodes. Dude, I had an hour-long conversation with him on the phone.
Oh man, that's gonna be like a Dan Carlin. I'm excited.
He's so supremely sharp. Maybe one of the smartest guys I've ever talked to. And the way he was articulating himself, the plan, how he's going about trying to show that not only is there election interference, but there's downright fraud. Because everyone always said in the 2020 election, and it is not isolated to just the 2020 election. I need to preface it with the 2020 election was the catalyst that lit a lot of fires.
Sure.
But this has been going on for years prior. There's always this notion that this is the freest and fairest election, yada, yada, yada. But you don't have supporting documentation to support that claim. When you say this is the freest and fairest election, how can you say that? What data do you have to prove this? And then
to me, that's propaganda.
Well, then, but
to some degree.
Let's have a logical walkthrough with this one. So, your data could be, well, we had no instances of voter fraud, right? There's no instances of caught voter fraud. Well, that's not true.
Yeah, we all agree that that's probably not a thing.
No, 100%. It's not true because we have seen people that are dead that are voting, people that don't live in the United States that were turned away, right? How do we know that? Because they didn't have a driver's license. They didn't have this, that, or the other in states that needed that. It was legal.
Here's a creepy thing in 2022. People were going to nursing homes. Like my grandmother has dementia, and they were helping people fill out the ballots. Now, I say helping, but depending on the person.
So one of the things that Jim is actually doing is he's working in Capitol Hill to basically be there's a chain of custody. There's a role and responsibility for each one of these people, which within precincts, within states. And so he's trying to get to the point where it's whose job is it to check for fraud? Whose job is it to look for people to turn away? Whose job is it to actually because right now there's a lot of people that are like, leading people to the poll booths and all these other things. But whose job is it, like, when fraud is detected, where does that go from there on? Based on what he was telling me on that phone conversation, it doesn't exist. There is no change. So like if I see you voting illegally, there's nothing I'm gonna do because there's no one whose role or responsibility it is to actually actively pursue that and defend against that. And that's kind of what he's saying is like, he's tackling it from a different way. He's not trying to prove that there's election interference. He's proving that there's no deterrence to election interference. There's no safety.
Which is scary.
And the way he was explaining to me is like, this way, the way they're tackling it, they don't have to prove election interference. They just have to prove that everything that's been said is incorrect. Ben Lawler and the Tom James family will ensure that whether you're purchasing your first custom fit suit or your 50th, the process is unrivaled. With the experience and quality of the Tom James name, allow Ben Lawler to help shape the vision that is your professional brand with a suit that speaks to the conviction in their craft. With fabric sourced here in the US, you'll know quality and craftsmanship are top of class. Like a sculptor examines wet clay before creating a masterpiece, Ben Lawler will walk you through the process of selection, measuring, and stitching to ensure your finished product is a work of art. Putting your trust in Ben is a guarantee that your brand will elevate to the next level. And always remember, you don't get a second chance at a first impression. You don't know that this is the freest and fairest election because no one's job is to check for that. You don't know if any illegals voted because no one's job is to check for that. There's no one in the roles and responsibilities for these precincts, these states, whose job it is to make sure that no one is illegally voting or voting, going to these nursing homes and casting ballots in mass or ballot harvesting and all these other things. Yeah. It was a fascinating conversation. I want him on the podcast so bad because I think it'll be the first one that really propels this podcast to a more serious tone. Does that make sense? And I need credentialed individuals that are much more intelligent than I am, much more learned, and truly live this world to kind of extrapolate from
in and out of it every day. I mean, especially that's what his job is to try to figure out.
He's legit, and we're going to be working on that. The real problem is, I'm not saying this because we're only been a podcast for 2 months, but I can't wait till this grows because when it grows and we have more capital, we can get better guests, we can get more people on, and then I don't want to get the same people that everybody else gets on. I want to get people that maybe people don't know but are specialists in fields that actually matter to them. So one of the people that I would love to talk to is whoever's in charge of school lunches. How the fuck did our school lunches get so bad? I would love to talk to someone.
They got really bad. I haven't ate in school in a long time.
Oh.
I had my 20-year reunion this past weekend, actually, so we went to the cafeteria. Funny you mentioned that.
Dude, it's like prison food. In fact, I'd go as far as to say prisoners probably eat better than our children do in public schools. It's insane. There was a compare and contrast between American public school lunch and Switzerland, South Korea, places in Europe, and it's one looks like a home-cooked meal, the other one looks like you could shit on a plate and say, "Here you go, kid." Jeez. It's insane. It's not even comparable. I'm looking forward to some of the people that we have on, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the podcast can do. But I did want to bring it back full circle, the Dave Smith, Andrew Cuomo debate. I remember I was watching it and I reached out to you and I was like, "Brother, what are you doing?" And you're like, "I'm driving." I was like, "Okay, good."
I was giddy in the car.
Turn this bad boy on. What did you think of that?
Man, I needed it personally. I just some semblance of justice. I just needed someone who said a bunch of wild nonsense to
get fact check in real time.
Sit there. Yeah, they fact check. He's like, "I didn't say that." And then play the clip, and oh man, it just Dave had the point that it is a little bit dark to be rooting to be dunking on someone, but man,
fuck that. Fuck that.
No, it is and here's the other thing I would say is I was having a conversation with a friend over the weekend, and I'll say they're on the Republican side, and a husband did not want to get the vaccine, but he ended up getting it. To me, we become we demonize each other so easily. To me, one of the most patriotic and beautiful things that happened were people that got that vaccine that didn't want it, weren't sure, but you know what? They did it for their family, they did it for their friends, and they did it for their neighbors. Some people did it for their job, like I had to, but When I was getting that vaccine, my thought was this is the right thing to do because I'm helping and protecting everyone around me. Now, granted, what we've learned now is, well, there was definitely a lot happening in all those that still coming to light. But there was a beauty that with our people, with Americans, that we were trying to protect each other, that we have to recognize, and we can't demonize each other anymore. We can't say, oh, you're on the left, wear your mask. We have to find a way to come back together, and that's the whole purpose I come out here.
I agree 100%, but you're mistaking the general public and the propagandists. So
that's why we have to make our own propaganda.
But where I disagree with you is when the people that said the things that were clearly lies, when the people were feeding the propaganda machine, like why did you feel the way you felt? I don't blame you. I don't blame someone for being afraid and doing what they think is right. What I blame is the people that caused the fear. Right. And Andrew Cuomo and Chris Cuomo were two peas in a pod during this time. So to see Chris eat some humble pie was the very least my soul needed.
Same.
Because how many people got that vaccine because of him and then now have irreversible side effects? How many people got that vaccine now have long vaccine, injuries, it's not long COVID, but it's like long vaccine injuries. My thing is, I agree that you cannot, I don't hate anybody on this planet. However, I also don't forget. And I'm not going to allow someone to rewrite history in real time, whether it's Anthony Fauci, whether it's Chris Cuomo, whether it's Don Lemon, whoever it is. These people were the ones that were propagating it. You say these things, but I didn't get the vaccine. I fought this. I was willing to lose my fucking job. I was like, baby, I'm going to find something else. We'll make it work out. I'm not getting this shit. My wife did. I didn't demonize her. I didn't tell her that she was lesser than. I love my wife. And she voted for Biden. I voted for Trump in 2020. And I told her, baby, I don't care what you do because I love you and all these other things. I'll never, I don't let politics get in the way of my personal relationships. Exactly. Fantastic. But what I'm trying to say, though, is the people that propagated this information. And the worst part about it was because of the sensorial nature of it, it was a one-sided fight. It was not like Chris Cuomo had like a Joe Rogan on his show and they were actually like debating the merits of what they were saying. It was a big Goliath punching down on David, and David had to sit there and take it for 2 to 3 years.
And then never adjusted. But maybe
our previous episode got flagged for COVID.
Immediately. That was a badge of honor. I was like, there it is.
In 2024. And I think all we did was bring up like the fact that like we didn't even talk about, vaccine hesitancy or anything like that. All I said was I'm never going to forgive them for what they did in reaction to COVID. We didn't even talk about like the misinformation or anything like that. Listen, if you got the vaccine, cool. If you didn't, also cool. If you did like other therapeutics, fine. I don't care what you did. You're an American. You have that right to do whatever the fuck you want. So do I.
Yeah.
And you can't take my rights away from me again.
And
I said it last time, I'll say it again. It radicalized me, dude.
Same.
I never thought in my life America would do that. I never thought I would lose my freedoms and my liberties.
I never thought I was going to be a political person at all. But this it stopped me in my tracks, and I just had time to read, and all of a sudden I started reading and learning and thinking, oh my God, what is going on? But we do have to help people. We don't have to forgive all of them, but we do have to help our friends find a way back to being friends with us. I mean, man, I miss my friends. I miss some of my friends that I can't even talk to.
You thought you lost? Did you legitimately lose friends?
I
wouldn't say they were friends then, man. If they're willing to end a friendship based on political beliefs, how tight was that bond?
Fair. But to me, it's within a certain parameter. I just didn't want to. I don't want to push people away. I never thought that a political belief, a medical decision, should dictate whether someone is my friend or not. But the whole thing got so charged, and if you're not doing it, then you're a bad person. There was just this demonization that, to your credit, I mean, I don't know how you withstood it, man. It's so impressive. I'm even at right now having a loss for words because I couldn't do it. I was like, I had to do it for my job, and I was nervous, and so. To me, I give mad props to the people that waited. To me, I feel like a Harry Potter mudblood at these days. I'm like, I don't know what's going on inside here anymore, but we're just hoping it's passed and we're through it.
I don't think it makes me like a better person. When I look back in hindsight, like I'm not saying like, oh, I did the right thing. Because like it could have easily been the wrong thing to do. Like we could easily be having a different conversation, but we are not. The skepticism that I had, the questioning nature that is inherent to me ever since I was born, proved to be beneficial to me in this moment. Yeah. I just got lucky that this is the way I was hardwired. I want to be careful in saying this, but like, you're saying a lot of, it is our job to bring these people back. It's our job to kind of remedy this bridge. But like, I would make the argument that like the bridge was never broken. Like, I never unfriended someone on Facebook or blocked someone or stopped interacting with someone or belittled or maligned someone. I had Steve Berger on this podcast, who, I mean, he is blue no matter who, okay? And we didn't even talk about politics. We talked about everything under the sun except for that. Me and him probably think so different politically, yet we were able to have a great conversation. Yes. And when we left, I almost felt like I could give the guy a hug. It was such a deep, great conversation. My thing, Greg, is like, I never allowed for politics to enter my personal life.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's my job or the onus is on me to repair a bridge that I never fucking broke. I've stood my ground. I've never changed. Like, I've stayed static in the sense of like, I've been socially liberal, fiscally conservative. That's been me since 18. Maybe my views on certain things have changed, but socially liberal, fiscally conservative. The landscape has shifted. Now you're asking me that I need to kind of accommodate, not saying you. It is being asked of us by some to kind of navigate these new waters. I'm good. I've always been chilling. I'm going to chill. I'm going to continue to do what I do because it's served me and my life. My life has become astronomically more. Life is really good right now.
Good.
And it is good because of the decisions that I have made. And I don't necessarily think that I need to sway my judgment or my perception of reality because I've navigated those waters accordingly. When I believe that the way I think or that the decisions I've made are no longer conducive to a fruitful future, then I will adjust, okay? What I'm trying to say is the way I view this world has benefited me. Now I'm being asked by some people to change the way in which I view this world. I'm good. Until the way I view this world no longer benefits me, my family, my future, I'm good.
All I would say is I as a person with strong convictions and kind of has their life established, there are people that don't have that. And I'm not saying it's our job to carry everybody and drag everyone along, lead a horse to water. I feel like some of my closest people in my life, I have the hardest time talking about politics with. It's really fascinating. It's interesting that if people are just a little bit removed, how more willing they are to have the conversation.
Do they talk about anything else? Is it just politics that they're
No, I'm probably the one that just talks politics the most. I probably force that on a lot of people.
Why do you think they are these people similar to age as you?
Yeah, give or take. Some are a little older, Gen X, some are younger,
Do you think it was because you lost your job during COVID that made you view politics more, thus now you're more engrossed in the world? Like why is it that under the same circumstances, all of your friends didn't kind of get this same itch for this political maneuvering that you did?
I think a lot of people, I'm 38. I think a lot of my friends are having kids.
Aging like wine, by the way.
What's that?
Aging like wine, by the way.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm trying. But, retinol and all the exercise, as they say. But, to me, it's everyone's having kids. People have other things going on, and they're just trying to raise a family and exist, right? And build a life like we've created for ourselves. And I think my age is curiosity, but what it comes down to is it cost me my job, and it created a fire inside of me to be like, what happened? And I wanted to know. And so I felt like I sat around forever and ever, like trying to piece it out on the internet and, not really getting anything solid until RFK Jr. announced his candidacy. And then I was like, I ordered his book, The Real Anthony Fauci. And again, that was my catalyst moment of walking out of the cave. I was like, I feel like I've seen the light, like, oh, this is what's going on. And it's so crazy. And again, maybe coming back to my, love for mythology and superheroes, but I just need justice, and I need the good guys to win sometimes. I get it. It's the real world. It's not always going to happen. But for me, I just feel this duty almost that it's my job to try to wake people up. And I've had friends tell me, well, I don't know if I want that. And I don't know, maybe I'm just stubborn. I'm just determined that I want people to see things in a certain perspective, or at least be open to the idea of discussing them. So many people, I'll send them things, and it's just automatic hostility shut down. Like, I can't even believe you buy this. This is Russian misinformation. I was like, this is a Danish guy I was talking about. I don't know why it's Russian all of a sudden, but I was like, now who's the conspiracy theorist? Like, I'm just trying to hey, here's a thought on whatever globalization.
Let me ask you this, because it seems like your catalyst for how you feel is two-pronged between losing your job in COVID, but also this.
Yeah, that was at least the catalyst for sure.
This figure like an RFK Jr. that really kind of gave you someone to kind of rally behind. But like we were talking about how after this election, like Donald Trump and Joe Biden are probably going to be like away from politics, right? If RFK Jr. doesn't win the election, what will you do? Not this election, but like next election, forward in your life, because you have this fervor for this individual, the ideologies, the thought processes, and all these other things. But like, what if it doesn't go your way? What then?
I'm gonna give you the same answer. I think I sent you the screenshot. I posted something from the Babylon Bee, and someone replied with, "Oh, you're conservative," and my reply was, "I'm American, and whoever is in office, that's gonna be my president. If it's Trump, will I be excited? Obviously not as excited as I would be about RFK Jr. being in there. But that's my president for another 4 years. And at that point, I'd probably put the cup down. I probably don't wave about RFK. I don't hang the flag off the balcony. I probably won't wear the T-shirt as much. And we're going to let him, let whoever is in do their thing. And maybe RFK runs again in 4 more years. And who knows? To me, I'm going to push. I just see this. I have this window of opportunity right now for a few more months. And I have to try. I just feel like this man has something that he can bring to the table to help solve some of the issues in the world, whether it's, again, coming back to getting poison out food, into the Ukraine war, getting some of these agencies under control. I want to feel like we've solved something. I feel like he's pretty on point with immigration and the wall. He understands that there are certain places like in Yuma that you have to have a physical barrier. RFK was anti-wall back in the day because he was subjective to propaganda too, like all of us are. He is just a human. But I think it is a beautiful thing when someone says, I was wrong. And it comes back to accountability. And I think that's what we talked about on our first podcast is if, people, I think I mentioned where, this Trump conviction, it doesn't sway Trump voters away from him. And Democrats can't understand, like, how could you vote for a felon? To me, we had the same thing happen today with Biden, right? His son gets voted in, or his son got his felony
convicted
charge.
on firearm charges.
Yeah, and if you want to look in way deeper stuff, we can probably find a way deeper stuff through the Biden campaign. Like the Wuhan cover-up talks about a company in Ukraine called Metabiota, a biolab that is half owned by Hunter Biden. So it breeds me. We can go find things about the Bidens that will. And to me, the Republicans are like, oh well, we can't vote for him. So to me, let's just get rid of the 5 families, the Bushes, the Clintons, the Obamas.
Don't you think it's a little...
the Trumps. I want them gone.
Don't you think it's a little coincidental that literally a week after Donald Trump is convicted of a very... I want to be careful. I don't want to...
He's convicted.
I don't want to pass propaganda myself. He was convicted by a jury of his peers on 34 counts. I get that. So he's convicted of a felony charge. And then, actually, a state charge. Jesus Christ. This is the problem with this. And then, so is
That's
Hunter,
the other funny thing. Most people can't even explain what
yes,
he's in charge
because
of.
it's, dude. Because
that's how weird it is.
And then Hunter Biden gets convicted a week later as if to be like, see, no one's above the law,
Oh,
Greg.
really? You don't think he's going to be pardoned no matter what happens after this election? I'm calling the shop right now. If it's not the day after the election, before December 31st, Hunter Biden will be pardoned by
I think a pardon isn't even necessary. I don't even think he's going to get like any sort of jail time. I'm sure he'll get like a sweetheart deal because of X, Y, and Z reason. And it'll be after the fact, probably after the election. So a lot of it will die down. I just think it's hilarious how like the nuance and timing of this is not lost on me because it's like there always seems to be like the scapegoat whenever something happens to Trump to either get him out of it with like the Georgia cases, the fact that like the prosecutor was like spending money and banging one of like the attorney. Jesus Christ. Anyway, I don't want to get into like, the lesser conversation. I want to stay kind of like above it. It's not lost on me that there always seems to be this correlation between something happening to Trump and then like something similar happening to like the people that he would be opposed to kind of be like, see,
oh look,
yeah, like fair is fair, fair is fair. Only one is a previous president, the other one is a drug addict of the son.
He's a really good painter.
Yeah, a very good painter. Yeah, Jesus fucking Christ.
To me, it's about the whataboutism, right? If I talk to a Democrat and I say something, well, you know, you're not bringing up your side. Well, that's whataboutism. I'm like, that's because you will not hold your own side accountable. And that's the issue. The Republicans will not hold their side accountable.
Republicans do the same thing, though. I say this all the time. Conservatives and liberals sound the same. Yeah. What about Biden? What about Trump? It's like, oh, you guys aren't voting for your candidate. You're voting against the others.
Yes. And that's where I want to come in and vote for someone that you actually believe in. People are like, well, I believe in Trump. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to say it again in case you missed it. He is either the greatest leader we've ever had, or he was tricked at every turn by his cabinet through COVID. It cannot be both. And that's why we cannot vote him back in.
In his defense, those early, like, remember the 2 weeks to stop the curve, to
Stop
halt the
the spread.
curve or something like that? I would have given him a pass if it was just 2 weeks. Hey,
I would have given him 2 months.
We got some information, miscalculated, we jumped the gun, but it was in an effort to save lives.
Oh, hey, by the way, ivermectin actually works.
Exactly.
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 They would have like pivoted and be like, hey.
Just own the L, bro. Hey, we overreacted. We shut down the economy for 2 weeks. Probably shouldn't have done that. Here are some additional therapeutics that you can do. We're not going to do ventilators because that's been proven to kill people.
Get outside, get vitamin D.
Yes.
Get some
it's
exercise.
like you could have pivoted. You could have shifted, and all
Most
of this
people
would
that
have
died
gone
had
away.
3.4 comorbidities.
But if they would have done that, I don't know if Biden would have won the election, because I'll say it. I think COVID is what won Biden the election.
Well, he didn't have to campaign. I mean, you know, he campaigned from his basement or wherever.
Did a couple debates though.
Did a couple debates. That's going to be, God, please. I think I saw today CNN actually announced that they're not going to allow RFK on their debate, even though he's met all their criteria.
So then what's
I think the
excuse?
FEC is suing. I don't know. There's going to be some litigation involved. You know, RFK. That's the bad thing about shutting down RFK is he's a very smart man.
Yes, but that's
and
the problem
litigate
with the judicial system. It's like, yes, okay, cool, but like that takes time, and in the meantime, they're going to have the debates, and it's like, okay, sue us. You'll make money. Cool. What do they care? They don't give a shit. They got donors.
You're right. But to me, the more it's kind of the same thing with Trump, right? When the more they go after Trump, the more it makes people want to be in his camp.
The more they go after.
The more you go after RFK and subvert him, people are like, wait, why what if I want to hear what he has to say? You know what I mean? And so that to me, that it can work against them. That's where I think this is also working against them, and where I do give RFK Jr. a chance. They're working so hard to keep him off all the ballots. He is going out. He is getting
both.
Yeah, both. They are getting more than double the signatures they need at every turn. In Texas and New York, they've collected more signatures for any candidate that's ever been collected. And what this is doing is it's allowing a grassroots campaign where people have to have conversations. You have to be engaged and be like, why would I want to sign that? And so now you have people out there working, collecting signatures. So I think RFK is more popular than any of the polls are going to allow to be shown.
I agree.
Because if they show that he was at 25, 30%, now people will start saying, because I have friends that say,
he's a viable dude, if he was 20%, that's a viable candidate.
Oh man, I have friends that say, just show me that he's got a chance, I'm on board. And so obviously I send them stuff all the time trying to sway.
That's why I get worried, because as the election will get closer, if they don't have that affirmation, which, you know, everything and anything will be done to prevent that from coming to the light of day. If it is the case, we don't know for certain, but if it is the case, I can say for certain that a lot of my friends are talking about RFK Jr. more so than Donald Trump or Biden. However, that does not necessarily seem to be the lay of the land for the older people. So when I say my friends, I'm talking about between the ages of like 25 and 31. Yeah. It's a lot of like independent talk. Both of these guys are dumb. Oh my God, they're too old. That's another one that comes up to like the fact that like we're making any sort of comments about Biden's age and we're not talking about Trump's age is hilarious to me, because that's just like cognitive dissonance. Like you're objectively trying to like not. You're obscuring your own candidate to try to make the other guy look like worse than he is, when they actually have a lot. Like, it's a Venn diagram. They have some things in common, and age is one of them.
They're the same, except for really 4 things: abortion, immigration, guns, and their demeanor. I mean, that's really about, and their taxes, tax treatment.
I would have said that Biden 5 years ago.
You could also add social issues. They stand.
I would have said that Biden 5 years ago. I think
so. There's 5 or 6 things at most.
No, I think Biden is truly compromised cognitively. I think
so.
like even if Trump wasn't running for president, like if it's Biden and literally anyone coherent, I'm voting for anyone coherent, because Biden does not seem cognitively aware of what is going on. I don't think it's healthy or right to allow him to run for office at 83, 84. Yeah. He has a higher chance of dying in office in his next presidential run if he wins than surviving.
I mean, it's just like if this was your dad. If this was your dad in any other small business and he was this age, you'd be like, Dad, why don't you step down? This can't be fun for him.
And what's crazy is like it's not like RFK Jr. is like a spring chicken. He's what, 66?
7, yeah.
Okay, but like what I'm trying to say is like even RFK Jr. is kind of old.
Sure.
I don't want to say it like that.
No,
but
he
yeah,
is. He
is
is.
kind of old. It's
Yeah.
like, is he as old as Donald Trump and
No, he's 10 years younger than they are.
But if let's say he were to win 2 presidential terms, like he would still be 77, 78, but actually 76 by the time he would get out of office, which is 4 years younger than Trump, 6 years younger than Biden, I believe, than they are right now. It's insane.
So here's the thing I'll toss out there that he's said openly, and if it's not true,
Brainworms.
yeah, well, there's that. But he goes, if in 4 years after my first term that our country and our children are not healthier, vote me out.
God, I love that.
I mean, neither of the other two would ever dream of saying vote me out if I don't fulfill one of my campaign promises. I mean, that's someone who's willing to stand behind it, and that's what democracy should be, right? It's, hey, we voted a guy, he's there for 4 years. If he does a good job, we'll vote him in again for another 4. If he does bad, we vote him out. But that doesn't seem to be what the game is anymore. Somewhere along the way in the 90s and 2000s, both sides became, you used to have the Democrats were anti-war, right? And kind of fought for the poor. But somewhere along the way, they got convoluted. And now there are just these 4 or 5 issues
Citizens United.
Yes, Citizens United. I totally agree. Which is
They don't need the backing of the unions and the common man.
After we talked about that last time, I it got comical to me. I was like, Citizens United. That's the most hilarious thing ever. Like, it's no citizens
the
involved.
naming? No.
Yeah, it's no human person.
Here's
It's just a bunch of corporations that are now Citizens United.
Let me hit you with a theory.
politicians.
Let me hit you with a theory, and you let me know if I'm in the right or wrong on this one. I say that Citizens United is incorrect, or it's like a faulty legislation, because I believe that if you're an American citizen, you should be able to support your political candidate to the utmost of your ability. If you want to give them $1 billion, you should be legally obligated to give them $1 billion. However, it should not be anonymous, and it should not be through PACs. It should be a direct donation and correlation. That way, it is easier to hold these people accountable in the event of that person's election to then see their legislative progress. Like, okay, if the CEO of Boeing gives you $100 million and your first act as president is to give Boeing a bunch of DOD contracts, well, now I'm putting 1-to-1 there.
Obama, McGraw-Hill.
Yes. So like my
Great
thing
example.
is, it's not that I think, so either you cap everybody, which I think is inherently un-American to successful people, or you allow for no one to support people, which then will only allow for the oligarchs and the aristocracy class to run for president. Like Vivek Ramaswamy, like a lot of people are saying like, well, he's spending his own money, he's doing all this. Yeah, but you don't want it to be the case that like only the rich and affluent can run for president.
That's where I think the cap, I think, is appropriate. I think
you mean a campaign cap. You can only have so much money.
Right, like I can only donate like what, $3,300 or $3,600 to RFK Jr.
No, I'm talking about something more specific, like you can only have a cap per candidate per run. Whatever that number is, make it 150 million, make it some astronomical number and increase it with the rate of inflation every year. Saying like for a federal, like a national presidential election, you can only spend up to $200 million on a campaign. Then it doesn't matter who gives you the money or whatever, because like after $200 million, and if you want to give $3,300 or $10 or $5, what have you, and if so-and-so wants to give them the $200 million up
That
front,
is how it should be.
Okay, but like cap it.
Because the
How is
GOP
it?
and the DNC each have $2 to $3 billion war chests, and
Yeah,
most of
well-
that money is being spent on subverting RFK Jr.
Yeah. Well,
They're not talking about policies and why they're better policy-wise. And that's why they don't want RFK on this debate stage, because he's going to bring up every single reason you should not vote for Donald Trump. And Biden, I think he took all of Trump's bad ideas, and I think he dialed it up.
I think you're very optimistic about how a debate with them would go. I think what would happen is Biden would get some softball questions, Trump would get a bunch of questions about election denial, and then all RFK Jr. would get is like vaccine conspiracy.
Good, let him talk about vaccines.
But what I'm trying to say is
Yeah,
like
I
that's
know.
no, but it wouldn't be the problem with the debate is truthfully it barely moves the needle. Like this has been supported with like previous polling. Like debates don't actually really affect the presidential election.
Then why won't they let him on?
I think it's because, can I be honest with you?
Yes, please.
The candidates are so bad that this might be the first time where the debate actually does affect an election. I think that's what it is. I think if you put RFK Jr. in between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, the compare and contrast would be so astronomical that like even the layman would be like, what is going on?
That's
here?
what gives me hope right there.
Yeah.
That's what gives me hope and why I have to try. And so, my friends, I'm sorry. I'm going to yell about you and at you for a few more months, okay? And then I'll drop this. Whoever wins, your guy, my guy, I'll let it go. I'll be supportive of whoever the president is. But until that time, I have to keep trying.
Fight the
and
good fight.
it is interesting that I have been engaging reluctantly on Facebook with different groups of people. And
what does that mean?
well, just getting into comment battles,
Oh,
right? But
dude.
it's not so much. I'm not battling from like, oh, your guy sucks, da da da. All I do is I go and I go, hey, I saw you commented on this. Here's where I think RFK Jr. actually aligns with a lot of what you're saying.
How do you find the time for that?
Oh, I don't have kids, and so. Yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing, right? I don't have kids yet at this point. I have a little brother who's.
Do you want kids or?
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. But if it happens, it happens.
My
little brother, I'm gonna watch him do it first. He's got a kid due here literally any day right now.
No shit.
So yeah,
Congratulations,
baby girl on the
uncle.
way. Yeah. So I'll be the crazy uncle. I'm gonna be like that. If you've seen that meme on the internet where he's teaching the 5-year-olds about 9/11 like that, I'm like, can't wait till I babysit. So it's gonna be a great time for my brother.
Dad, did you hear about the Vietnam War? What?
I keep pushing for him to name the baby Kennedy, but so far he's not. I think I may have ruined that this year.
Man, it's been a crazy 2 months since you've been on this podcast before, and in that time, there's been a lot of things that have kind of come up to light. A lot of political navigation and maneuvering. The Republicans found their candidate. The Democrats always had theirs. RFK Jr. went from Democratic hopeful to independent. Or actually, there was a possible libertarian push there, but then he ended up getting the
that speech. Go watch that speech. Anyone on the internet, go watch that libertarian speech, especially if you are a Trump supporter. You have to check it out. 45 minutes.
When Trump was on there, or are you talking about when RFK Jr.?
Was on. Honest, well, I'll tell you this. Watch both.
Yeah.
Watch both and
compare and contrast.
And I hate how the libertarians treated Trump. I mean, as soon as before he was walking out, they're booing him. I'm like, can you at least boo like at the policy issue and not just like the person? Because now it just, I don't know.
Do you think it was the fact that RFK Jr. was up before him, though, that probably affected that?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, Trump is obviously the heavy hitter, right? And so I say let him come in last and let him try to sway everybody. I think RFK's speech was highly intelligent and targeted to the libertarian crowd. Trump, I think he absolutely roasted the libertarians a little bit when he came out. He goes, yeah, boo all you want. You'll get your 3% and then you won't be relevant, which was pretty, tough. But
I mean, Dave Smith said it on JRE. He's like, come over to us and lose with us. And just there's relief in this team.
Yeah, I guess. But to me, I don't know. I have found myself to be more libertarian than I ever thought the more I listen to Dave Smith. And so he has really brought a lot of things to light that I didn't consider.
I refuse to give myself a title.
I say I find myself
category.
more libertarian. Yeah. I mean, to the point of the person that hit me up on Instagram, be like, "Oh, you're conservative." Be like, "No, I'm an American." Yeah. I just, I've been more libertarian leaning ideas lately.
I describe myself financially conservative, socially liberal, but if you want to know where I stand, ask me about the topic. I do want to ask you, in the recent, I want to say 2 to 3 weeks, Biden essentially through executive order reinstated the Remain in Mexico policy, which Donald Trump did when he was in office.
But that was racist then.
Yeah, but that was racist then. So I'm curious to hear your take on why do you think he signed an executive order to essentially abolish it on his first day, only then to come back 3.5 years later and redo it after X number of million of illegal immigrants have flooded our country?
I guess the question is, do you want my conspiracy answer?
I want what you think. I want what you think. Because I'm sure we're probably closer than anybody would hope we were.
I mean, to me, he ran on that, it's a racist thing to do, right? And so was it a campaign promise fulfilled initially? And then
you're talking about Biden. Biden ran on Remain in Mexico being a racist thing.
Yeah, you should do that. Yeah, that was right. To me, thank you, Joe Biden, I'll say, for doing something. Like, I'm not just going to sit here and bash the guy. If he does something right, whoever the president is, I will.
You're talking about reinstating it?
Yeah, reinstating. Like, let's slow down the spread.
And 3.5 years.
I know. And at this point, is it too late? I mean, the last time we talked, it's
not too late. It's already done.
Right. I mean, that's it.
But the demographics will change now. 11 million projected. We don't really know because we don't know. We can only talk about like the influx and how many new immigrants were coming in every day, and the projections are 11 million. That's insane. That's more than some states.
Yeah, bigger.
And when's the next census, brother?
I don't know, when is it?
4 years.
4 years. I was like, I don't remember the last one was.
Yeah, so every 10 years, obviously, is a census. I believe it's 2028 is the next one.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to say is like, it will redistrict, reline, and redistribute power based on population.
But is that what they're always doing anyway? All the gerrymandering, whether they're letting immigrants in or not.
They will do that. That is okay. So what we're essentially saying is like, what I'm saying is representatives are based on population density, where senators are based on just flat out, you get 2 senators per state.
Right.
But the representatives of a state are based on population. Now, what you're saying is the districting within the state, and that is more of like a state versus national issue, right? The redistricting in the states usually comes after the census, and then they realize whether or not they're going to gain another representative, lose a representative, maybe more than one representative, like California, because California had a mass exodus during COVID and their demographics shifted. So it's like you will always redline and redistrict no matter what every 10 years, because we're playing the game of gerrymandering. Like what we're essentially saying is like, we don't want too many battleground districts. We kind of want to know the lay of the land between the uniparty, because I do believe the Republicans.
Where we can focus our money.
I think that in the legislative branch, I think there's a uniparty. Executive wise, there's not, and judicial, I would say there's not. But legislatively, the congressmen are in for congressmen. They don't represent you and I. They are up for the highest bidder, whoever they may be. And in doing so, they want to make sure that the party leaders want to make sure that there's always this constant battle between one another, but neither side ever gets too much power, because they need the illusion of competition. That's what I genuinely think is happening.
I mean,
now the problem is the politics of the Democratic Party have gotten so bad, and the country is swinging so conservatively, that I do believe that the Remain in Mexico policy was abolished specifically to bring in illegal immigrants. Why else do it if the action wanted was not for illegal immigration? Why else? Because it was working. Say what you want about it. It wasn't even cruel or unusual. We're basically saying, if you come over to this country illegally, we will catch you. We will bring you back to Mexico. We will allow for you to do all the documentation and try to come into this country legally, but you will stay in Mexico, not in the U.S., until that process has been completed. If that process was working, why abolish it if there weren't ulterior motives? And by the way, who are these people going to vote for? Do you think they're going to be conservative, or do you think they're going to be liberal? Genuinely.
Easy answer. They're going to vote for who let them in.
Exactly. They're going to vote for who let them in. Until they have children. And they try to save this country like my parents did. I mean, my parents came here legally, but what I'm trying to say is like they fled communism, they fled socialism. And maybe that's why financially I'm more conservative, where socially I'm more liberal, is because my mom would tell me about how like religion was banned in Albania. And then my dad would tell me how they couldn't even own a goat or a cow to like milk or make, like slaughter and then have meat or cheese. I just think less government is the answer, both socially and fiscally.
I totally concur.
Get out of people's ways.
I mean, that's what I've been reading this, Thomas Sowell book, the economic facts and fallacies. That's the more regulation, the more hyper-regulated an area is, the worse it's become. And so to me, I want someone who's going to come in, let's get rid of some military bases, let's deregulate some of these things. And I don't know that RFK, again, is going to answer every single question perfectly, but I do think he can clean at least part of the basement, and we can start to make some room down there and get our foundation back under us, because I just don't feel like we have any moral authority in the world. Why would anybody listen to us at this point? I'm disappointed.
The almighty dollar.
What's that? The almighty dollar. I mean, I want... RFK has given me a reason to believe in politicians again, which is a weird thing to say. That makes me a conspiracy theorist alone.
He's not really a politician.
He's not really a politician. But to me, he's... To your point that you made earlier, he does not have to do this. And I know Trump doesn't either. I mean... And that was his whole deal of like, well, I'll get in to save this country. I mean, that's where RFK is now, is he has seen problems, and COVID really pushed him into this. He is a Kennedy, and I'm not saying his life has been totally easy his entire life, but he's had name recognition. He's married to Cheryl Hines. He could just be a dude living out in Hollywood, going to parties, going out surfing, doing pull-ups or push-ups, whatever he does in his spare time.
He was chilling before.
Yeah, he was just chilling.
But that's everyone's argument for Trump. He could have been doing the same thing. That's Dana. I just watched an interview with Dana White today.
But now Trump has messed up. Trump has caused problems. He's run up the debt. He shut down the country, and so 3.3 million businesses that will never reopen. So to me, that's where it's different. And so that's RFK's advantage, is he gets to come in and say, hey, look, I haven't messed up yet, so I am ready to give him a chance. All the people that want to give Trump a chance for that reason, are the people that I want to try to convert and say, let's try it again, but with someone who I think has a little bit more moral, a better moral compass. And again, RFK was a heroin addict for 14 years of his
14
life.
years, yeah.
To me, I give him a little bit of leash because his dad was assassinated on live TV. So if anyone's going to be a heroin addict,
And his uncle.
personally, I wish he would have become Batman. He didn't. He did heroin, but now I think he's actually trying to come back and help people.
He's still young. He might become Batman.
Yeah, he's got time.
The part you bring up about Trump running up the debt is actually the second reason why I won't vote for him. Not so the first reason is because he shut down the economy. Yeah. The second reason is because he ran up the debt as well. And I think the debt is our biggest national security issue, more so than anything else. I believe our relationship with Russia and China is number 2. So like debt, Russia and China, domestic issues. I'm not even worried about Israel Palestine right now, if I can be honest with you.
Same. I don't want anyone there. I hate what's happening there.
I think we need to stop funding Israel. I don't want to fund the bombing of children.
Yeah.
And that's not an Israeli thing.
That's an easy thing to say.
That's like, I don't want my tax dollars going towards bombing of children.
You don't want to be like Nikki Haley and writing your name on a bomb that gets sent into Palestine?
How insane is that?
That is some dark energy.
How insane is that? This is a weapon of war that is going to go and kill people.
That was disturbing to me. Yeah. I have friends and some other people that I was like, I don't know if they saw this. I've stashed it. I can't wait for them to bring it.
And it's not like it's going to like the front lines of a combative enemy. It's going towards like villages, cars, schools, hospitals. That's fucking dark.
I hate it. I hate it so much. It makes me so mad.
Do you think some of these people? Oh man, this is going to be a bad question. So I need to be very careful how I formulate it. Why do you think some of these people? It's so obvious that they've forsaken their own souls. Because Nikki Haley's a conservative. She's supposed to be an evangelical, quote unquote. Yet you are signing bombs that are going to go bomb.
That says finish
children.
them. Finish them.
Yeah, that's fucking insane.
Now, granted, if you could drop that bomb directly on one really, really bad guy, you might be able to get. I might be able to get behind it, but you don't know where that bomb's going. I mean, you have an idea that it's going to somewhere that, like you said, villages and tents and everything else, and they've dropped so. I feel like it's been a little overkill by Israel, and I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. I think I want Israel to exist. I want my Israel friends to be happy to be able to travel to their homeland. And that's the thing I've read, through Palestine, and whether it's you're in Islam or you're Jewish. There are these Christianity. There are all these very special, precious sites that, if you
talking about in Jerusalem.
Yeah, in Jerusalem, it's such a beautiful part of the country, part of the world that is just so war torn over old books, and I hate it. I think there are many paths to God, and to me, like, religion is like a sports team. Depending on where you're born, that's kind of how it's going to be.
But that's not really doing the depiction of history truly correct.
It's not.
Because if you really want to talk about the Crusades and all that other stuff, truthfully, Jerusalem, Israel, the nation of Israel, the city of Jerusalem, if you really want to go back to the history, the Crusades were a reaction to Muslim aggression. Go back and read the history books. Islamists acted first. It was not necessarily an act of like religious beliefs that spurred the hatred for so on. I think what it was is a constant eye for an eye.
Yeah. You
hit me, I'm going to hit you. You hit me, I'm going to hit you. Now extrapolate that over the course of the next 1,000 years. Where are we? 2,000 years. Where are we? I don't think, man, this is going to be dark. I don't think peace in the Middle East is truly sustainable so long as America is leading that effort.
That may be a fair take. Because I'm certainly not the expert.
Unless we do something about the military-industrial complex, I don't think peace is actually our initiative.
I definitely don't feel like peace has been our plan for a while. That's where, when I started reading about the JFK assassinations, where you just begin to understand what was really going on and why they hated him so much and why they wanted him out, because they wanted control. They had, Operation Mongoose when they were, was already in play when JFK came to the office. And again, going back to accountability.
You're talking about in Vietnam?
No, Bay of Pigs. Sorry.
Bay of Pigs, sorry.
Sorry. Whenever the Bay of Pigs plan was already in play, he just trusted his advisors. And he let it play out. He didn't send air support, and that pissed him off. And publicly, he still took the accountability for it. And that is where I don't feel Trump and Biden will do the same. When they mess up, they don't take the accountability. And that's something I want. If we have to have one of these political families, I want one where the history shows that when we mess up, whether it's our fault or not, that we can say, hey, look, we made an error, and to the point of the COVID stuff, they never pivoted. They never made an adjustment. That things, let's try this. Let's do the ivermectin. Let's do exercise. Let's
They're trying
get
to
outside.
rewrite history, dude. They're trying to say
Yeah.
that they didn't say certain things. They're trying to say that they didn't make certain mandates. They're trying to say that certain things didn't happen, and that's the part that drives me. It's like they're trying to gaslight me.
And you're not wrong. I mean, that's where like there's a really great. It's like a 5-6 hour podcast, and you listen to the last hour of it, but you just want to speed it up. But Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, Destroyer of Worlds. It talks about the creation of the atom bomb. And the last probably hour and a half is all about like the days in October, kind of with Cuba, Russia, and everything that's going on again today. Subsequently, here
History
we are.
has a way of repeating itself.
It's certainly rhyming right now. We have a president in office who is, I feel like, just not carrying the weight of the Oval Office. And just like LBJ didn't, LBJ at least had the cognizant ability to be like, I messed up, I need to resign and get out of here.
Can I ask you a question? When you talk to your liberal friends, when they say that they're going to vote for Biden, what is the onus?
He's not Trump.
He's not Trump.
I mean, that's the biggest thing is I can't vote for that guy. Orange man, no way.
Do you bring up like inflation? Do you bring up the receding value of the dollar? Do you bring up the domestic and international hostility increase?
I try, but I feel like I have to be very careful because
They're easily
when you're delivering facts that people don't want to hear, they're resistant to it. And again, going back to Plato's cave allegory, Plato's teacher was
Have you thought
Socrates.
about asking them questions instead of making statements? Instead of saying that this happened, like, well, have you, what do you think about the value of the dollar?
And that's where I've gotten a lot better at
Okay.
my conversation over the last year is I'll send a thing, be like, hey, I saw this on Instagram or whatever it is. What are your thoughts? Like I have a friend who's majored in economics. So I'm like, hey man, I want your economic brain on this. What do you think about this policy? Does this make sense? I have a buddy who's a journalist degree, which, we kind of have hard times because he really believes that the journalism and mainstream media is
not dead.
not dead, and that we should trust him. And I'm just
not
like,
only
oh
is
my
it
God,
dead,
oh my God, oh
but
my
the
God.
corpse of which is just being still like puppeted. It's
I don't know what's
crazy.
more alive, mainstream media or Joe Biden at this point. They both seem to be kind of.
Oh, I'll put Trump up there too, brother.
Yeah. So to me, I need people to just continue to listen to Kennedy. I know his voice is tough, but that you just have to continue to listen to people that you don't want to listen to. If you ever want to find common ground with someone that you don't think you have common ground with.
They could take that and say, okay, well, I'll listen to Trump.
Good. Do it. I think they should. I want them to. I want them to listen to Trump. I want them to listen to Biden. I want them to listen to Kennedy. I think that those are going to be the three viable candidates that are out there.
Do you think presidential debates, because this is the first time that we saw the Democratic Party not do debates for their primaries, basically just say, Biden's our guy. And then we saw Donald Trump basically say, I'm not doing a debate and letting the Republican primaries kind of play out. Granted, turned out to be the right course of action. But do you think that there should be legislation placed on presidential elections and primaries to force debates?
Yeah, because they need to defend their record.
Yeah.
And make the case of, hey, here are the policies, here's the things I promised, here's where I failed, here's what I still plan to do. I don't see why that's so hard for these politicians to be like, look, I didn't make it this four
Interview
years.
for a job they're applying for?
I mean, that's what it is, right? Is you need to stand up and be like, here's what I think, here's what I've done, here's why you should vote for me. This whole just yelling about the other guy and I'm not him is not enough. And all because people get attached to one or two issues, whether it's guns. People still think that RFK is anti-Second Amendment. He's not.
I feel like he's said it many times.
Yeah, but those people are never going to see that unless you go actively looking for it. And so that's the issue is the echo chamber we're all lived in.
He's never made a stance that was like against.
Here's one he just said the other day. My buddy sent me a text.
Like, how can you make a statement that this guy is against the Second Amendment when no statement has been said that he says he's against the Second Amendment? How can you make
I'll just
that
say,
claim?
all my GOP friends, I'm going to give you one here. There was a tweet that my friend sent me that was from Kennedy where he called the NRA a terrorist organization.
So that's
now I think that's a little harsh, but
yeah, it's a hyperbolic.
Now here's
statement.
where I would
was
say.
it after Sandy Hook?
I don't remember what
when
the context was.
Tensions were really flaring.
Probably I'll just say probably around that time if I had to guess, but I
remember there was
I don't
a
remember the
lot
date
of
of it.
stuff being said.
But here's what I'm gonna tell those people: go on Netflix or YouTube, and you need to go watch Patriot Act with Hassan Minhaj about the NRA. It's about a 5-year-old episode. It's 25 minutes long. He's not totally wrong. the way the NRA does a lot of nefarious things, shipping guns in Central America, which causes immigration, causes chaos. There is a lot of things that the NRA does that seem to be a little bit sketchy, and I may not have that perfect, but I'm not far from how that's working, and they're cycling guns in the immigration. And then, well, now we need more guns because more people are coming in. We're scared. More guns. And so then, well, let's get rid of the old guns. We'll ship them down here. So it becomes a circular deal where it becomes a spiral. And so he's not totally wrong about that. And so I told my buddy, I was like, please keep sending me stuff that you hear and see about RFK that you think is negative, because it only helps me build my case in trying to either A, counter that, oh, well, that's taken out of context, or B, if there's something actually wrong, I want to know. So that way I say, all right, he's not perfect here, because again, he's just a human guy.
Greg, I'm going to say this, and we've been on this for an hour and 37, but this is because I feel like we've done a lot of agreeing, but let me tell you something that I think we will disagree on. My only concern with the way you think is not the way you think, but why. My only concern for you personally is once RFK Jr. is out of the equation, who will be this paragon for you? Because a lot of the way you tackle this, I think, is beautiful. Very logical, very like oriented in facts and reality. Like, you know, here's the data, here's the statistics, here's the report that was produced. You're a very learned guy, a very read guy. When you speak, I listen, right? It's like, okay, well, why is he saying this, right? But my fear is what will happen with your convictions, with all of this, when you no longer have this individual to kind of tie it to. Because, you know, let's say RFK Jr. is out of the equation now. Mm-hmm. Who do you rally behind? You might be homeless.
I don't think I stand up for Biden or Trump at this point.
That's not my question. My question is, who do you rally behind after RFK Jr.?
I think I'd take a step back from politics and wait for someone else to step back up. I mean, I'm encouraging friends right now to run as judges. I'm encouraging them to run for even just, you know, school boards, whatever it may be. Talking to a friend this weekend, you know, she's very involved in Missouri politics, and she gave me the rundown list of who she thinks is really good. And actually, I'd like to give them a little bit of endorsement. And I have not looked up these people, but just, and I say endorsement, look into these people, because this is someone that I do trust to do their due diligence. And one of the things, the list she gave me was that we should look at, for Missouri, Lincoln Hugh for lieutenant governor candidate. I guess he's currently a state senator down in Greene County. And the other one she really likes is Mike Kehoe. So those are the two that she really stands behind from a Republican standpoint. Reps? I think Kehoe is running for governor here for Missouri. So again, I'm not, I don't classify myself as someone on the left. I don't classify myself as someone on the right. I'm, you know, I would say more libertarian leaning, but that's still, I call myself an American first. And so I just want the person who I feel can solve some problems. And that's, right now, it's Robert Kennedy Jr. And if he's not there, then we'll see who comes up in 4 years. Because right now, he's the only one that, I hope he inspires others like him, I guess, is what I want. I mean, he's inspired me to be vocal about this.
I think he has, Greg. Look at us both.
I mean, that's it.
As small as this is,
yeah,
I would not be doing this if I don't want to say I wouldn't be doing this without RFK Jr. I would have done a podcast, but I would not have been so passionate about third-party politics, about a third horse in the race, if I didn't have also such a paragon to kind of tie it to. I always go back to this. I don't think he's perfect, but I don't think any presidential candidate ever in U.S. history is or has been.
To me, he, like, also the book, like, Profiles in Courage, the first chapter, it's talking about how history rhymes is so fascinating. So John Quincy Adams is the first chapter of that book. Now, his dad was John Adams, who was president. And you know, John Quincy Adams was a Federalist, and
saying John Adams was a president is kind of like underselling his story. Founding father and president, second president.
Right. And but sorry, trying to get to the point of
there's only been what 58, 56.
Yeah. So, but John Quincy Adams, you know, he was a Federalist, and when I can't remember exactly what he was running on or running against. I believe I want to say it was something against Thomas Jefferson at the time, but the Federalist Party was like. And people were writing to him, "You've abandoned your party. You're the worst." Basically, they treated John Quincy Adams, the Federalist, did exactly how the Democrats have with Robert Kennedy Jr. And where he felt truly like he was standing alone. He's like, "Look, I've got to turn my back on my father's party, who he created the Federalist Party, right?" And when it comes into American mythology, it just feels like we're in the midst of this story that we have a chance to actually do something really powerful and really cool and make an adjustment that shows the world that we don't not care, because I think a lot of people do care. I mean, if it's not evident, look at the college campuses, look at the media and how people are screaming about some of these things. People do care, and I think we just have to get them focused on a candidate who can solve some of the things they care about. And again, I know he can't solve everything, but I think we can get our kids healthier by voting him in. I think we can stop this war in Ukraine by voting him in. And those two things alone are enough to get me to get behind him. Yeah. Because the other two don't talk about it. And that's where I struggle with supporting either of them. So yeah, if he's not around, I back up and take a step back, and I just watch and wait and listen. Maybe Dave Smith, maybe Tim Dillon. One of those guys run.
Dude, I love Tim Dillon.
I love those guys. And I
if
think
Dave Smith ran and Tim Dillon was his VP, he's got my vote.
Yeah, on board.
He's got my vote.
I mean, again, are those guys perfect? No, but
far from.
But I think they have a moral compass.
Guys.
And they're intelligent guys that they have hearts to consider these really heavy issues and bring in experts to learn more. And that's what I wish. And I guess they say that's what our president does with his cabinet. But to me, these people are just all bought and paid for. Like when you're bringing the chairman from Pfizer and you place them in the FDA, you don't think they're going to let some stuff slide for their company, and then when they leave the FDA, they get a payout. I mean, it's just there's these royalties that Fauci got and his buddies at Barrick, and it makes me mad that they are making money off people dying because you can't make a vaccine. You have to. It's a weird loophole that they make these vaccines. If you're making a vaccine, guess what? You're also making a bioweapon. Because why else would you need a vaccine? So they go hand in hand. If you're trying to make a vaccine, you are simultaneously
creating the issue and the solution simultaneously.
That's the deal.
I have a buddy who I have to be careful how much information I say because I don't want to dox him in any way, shape, or form. Let's just say he works for a major pharmaceutical company, and the conversations I've had with him are some of the darkest, worst perspectives of humanity I've ever heard in my life. And a lot of what we think of the pharmaceutical companies is true.
Yeah. I mean, my girlfriend had me watch that show, was it Dope Sick on Hulu with Michael Keaton? I was just like, she's like, heads up, you're going to love it, but it's going to make you mad at the same time, which is basically like the things I love, like politics, So.
When are you in town again, man?
Man, whenever you want me to be, but I do have one more gift for you.
Sure. Is it a Holy Bible?
I call
I'll burn if I hold it.
I call it my Holy Bible. So, RFK, his words, our time. Now, before I hand that off to you, there was one segment in here that I did highlight. It's on page 365. It's from his speech. It's honestly one of two of his favorite speeches.
You want to say it?
I do have part of it I do want to read.
Yes.
So part of this is from the day that Martin Luther King died. His other speech that I absolutely love, and I listen to it all the time, is the Day of Affirmation speech in South Africa. It's absolutely incredible to me. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there are parts in here that I think are so relevant. So here's what I'll say, and I'm not going to do an RFK, senior impression because I'll totally botch it. But here's what he said in the speech the day Martin Luther King died. In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it is perhaps well to ask what kind of nation we are and what direction we want to move in. For those of you who are filled with bitterness, with hatred, and a desire for revenge, we can move in that direction as a country, in great polarization, filled with hatred toward one another, or we can make an effort to understand and to comprehend and to replace that violence with an effort to understand with compassion and love. We have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to go beyond these rather difficult times. What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence or lawlessness, but love and wisdom and compassion towards one another, and a feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country. We can do well in this country. We will have difficult times. We've had difficult times in the past. We will have difficult times in the future. It is not the end of violence. It is not the end of lawlessness. It is not the end of disorder. The vast majority of people in this country want to live together, want to improve the quality of our life, and want justice for all human beings who abide in our land. Let us dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Let us dedicate ourselves to that. And that is one of my favorite speeches. And again, I highly recommend listening to the whole thing because I don't do it justice. But this is a book I listen to audio all the time. When driving, it gives me hope and it inspires me and it gives me the courage to continue to have these conversations. And so I just want to pass that off to you as copy, and it means the world to me to have me on here, Ariane.
I'm going to tell you something I just told a recent, I have one of my high school wrestlers asked me, because I have a copy of The Real Anthony Fauci, and he asked me, he was like, do you have the book? Do you mind if I read it? I was like, how are you interested in reading this? And he's like, yeah, I just want to read about it. And I was like, I'll tell you what, I'll buy you a copy and I'll ship it to your house, and this will be the start of your library. And on there, I had like this little gift card, and I was thinking about like what it is that I wanted to say on there, and I did two things, right? Number one, I said knowledge is never owned, it's only rented. And two, the greatest gift is knowledge. So you've given me today the greatest gift 2 times over. Greg, I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate you coming down here. It's always a pleasure having you on the podcast. I want you to be a regular guest, man. I appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for having me.